Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just mention a couple of things before we get started. Has anyone received their most recent magazine yet? Okay, well, you should be receiving them very shortly. I know that those are getting sent out kind of as we speak. So it's a beautiful issue. The featured article is Barbara Janicki. And so it's a lovely issue. It does have the Pastel USA 99 Voices show within it. So be watching for that to arrive in your mail if you're a PSWC member. It'll be sent to the address that you have on file in your membership. It's always a good idea to go online to the PSWC website, go in the membership tab, our website has been updated, and go to your profile to make sure that your contact information has been updated. That's how you'll be sure that you're getting our e-blasts and that the magazines are being sent to the right address. I also wanted to mention, I hope that a lot of you were able to see the most recent We Talk Art with Bethany Fields. It was a lovely interview. I mean, she's a lovely person. She shared so many wonderful tips. It was just a really great session. That's posted on our YouTube channel. The link to that is also on our website. So you can go to our We Talk Art page to find that if you didn't get a chance to see it. And also I wanted to mention that we have Bethany scheduled to do a demonstration for us in December if she's feeling up to it. So we're hoping that that's going to be happening. Actually, our Moose show, Doug is going to be happy I'm remembering to share this with you, is a little bit earlier in 2025. So you're going to start seeing announcements that it's open for entry beginning in December this year. So December 2nd, the Moose 2025 is going to be open for entry. So you'll start seeing announcements for that coming out. And let's see. We will have a December issue of the magazine coming out too. So you'll see that. Our feature article is going to be Nancy King Mertz. We have a lot of really exciting things coming up in 2025. We're going to have additional We Talk Art sessions, additional demonstrations by wonderful folks like Carol StrockWasson, going to be following up with a lot of other wonderful artists. So, hop onto our website and see what we have in store for you. It's going to be another really exciting year for PSWC. Okay, Carol StrockWasson. I'm going to do sort of an informal and then a formal introduction. I met Carol at IAPS, and when I arrived at IAPS, I met Carol and I thought, gosh, this is sure a lovely person. I really like her. She's
And then
just,
she got to know me.
yeah, no, I thought you were so cool and she was really fun and funny and we just hit it off. And I thought, gosh, I would like to know a little bit more about her, I'm thinking, I wonder if she's a good artist. I was like, my husband and I have been watching Game of Thrones because he'd never seen it before. I don't know if any of you were familiar with Game of Thrones. I'm like Jon Snow, honestly. I knew nothing. I'm I haven't been a pastel artist for that long. So, ignorantly, I'm like, Carol Stark-Watson, gee, wonder who she is. So I'm Googling her and I'm like, oh, holy moly. Yeah, I guess she's a good artist. Oh my goodness. So I'm like, Carol, hey, maybe you'd like to come and do something for PSWC. And luckily she agreed by starting with coming and doing a demonstration for us at our general membership meeting. I felt so lucky. You guys probably know a lot more about her and were more familiar with her a long time ago, obviously than I was. Carol is a signature member of the American Women Artists. She's a master pastelist of the Chicago Pastel Painters. She's been a master circle painter for IAPS, and she's a master for Pastel Society of America. She has done a lot of painting in her rural area, focusing on color, shape, and design. She does plein air painting, and she works in the studio. And she works in not just pastel, but also oil, monotype, prints, and watercolor. She teaches in her StrockWasson studio in Indiana, and she teaches the importance of the fundamentals in art, whatever medium she's using. And also, Carol, are you now working through, what's that? I'm sorry, but I know.
It's Mascaras, and it's
Yes.
an online teaching community.
And I know several artists that are now teaching through that online teaching community, which seems like something really worth exploring. Anyway, we're very lucky to have Carol joining us today and doing a demonstration. And we're hoping that she'll be coming back and joining us in another capacity soon. So I don't want to take up any more time. Carol, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Pam, and thank you, members of PSWC, for showing up. This is awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I always like to start my demos with a PDF, and I will email this PDF to Pam, and she can distribute it to all of you. But I'm an artist, but I'm also an explorer. I like to try new things and experiment and see, well, what can I do with this? And how can I use it with pastel? So I'm constantly exploring and reaching out to different ways and just going where nobody would have thought that you could go with pastel. And this was one of the things I learned over the years. And let's see, I need to go and share my screen. There we go. There we go. I have to talk my way through this. Okay, I think I did it. Now, can everybody see my PSW demo screen?
Yep.
All right. Start. So I think I'm very creative, but I do it through taking risk and just trying new things, even if they're crazy. I love to experiment. And one of the things I like to experiment with monotype. I learned about monotyping through looking at some of Edgar Degas' work. He went through a period in his life where he did a lot of monotypes, and then he would put pastel over them. He would use the medium as a starting point to other paintings. The image could easily be reworked and revised. Well, that's me all the way, because I am constantly reworking and revising things as I work on them. It's the being able to manipulate the ink on a printing plate. He used his fingers, tools to create unique and textured images. The experimental process for him was inspiring to create new works and move in new directions. And this is one of the reasons I like monotype. It's a creative outlet to move in a new direction. So this is one of his monotypes, and this is pastel over monotype. Here's what they look like before the pastel. It's just printer's ink and a wipe away technique. So he's covered the pastel, this monotype, entirely with pastel. This is another pastel over monotype. He liked to represent a diversity of subject matter. Some of the tools he used were daubers, felt rolled up to wipe away and create form, fingers, textured fabric, sponge, back of a brush, reapplying ink when necessary, a continual movement of back and forth in the design process. This is a monotype, landscape monotype, and with pastel over it. And you can see how he's just layered that pastel on top and the unique surface that the monotype makes. Sometimes you can get two images from one monotype. Let's see. There we go. And this is one of my favorites. So who but Degas would put cows in the foreground of a landscape. So I really thought that was a very creative use. Edgar Degas, Women on the Terrace of a Cafe, pastel over monotype. You can see in the background how he has left the monotype and not covered it with anything. And if you have any questions while I'm showing this, go ahead and ask. His monotypes were usually smaller size, not big, but this is just an example of one of how big one of the monotypes was. And what I like about this particular piece is how he has used the pastel only on one area of the print, leaving the rest of it alone. So Evelon AP material for pastel painting and printing. This is a new material. I first learned about it in 2019 when I took a Dawn Emerson workshop. And at first I didn't really care for it, but then I started experimenting more with it and found out it has a lot of uses. It's archival, it's UV resistant, it's tear proof, it's stable, it's made of pure polyester and pure nylon, dries flat, accepts any medium from acrylic to oil to watercolor to pastel and to ink. They have several different weights of it. I use the 168 GSM. I find it's just the right thickness. I think the 98 GSM was too thin. It absorbs liquids very quickly. I have found that unless you seal the surface, it will absorb any sprays and watercolor inks too quickly for me. I seal my monotypes printed on Evelon with clear gesso using a brayer. The brayer ensures the gesso is only a thin layer over the surface of my monotype before I add the pastel. And I like this thin layer because I've built up texture with my inks on the monotype. So I like to show what is underneath that clear gesso. And this is Liquitex clear gesso with tooth. I found out that clear gesso does come without tooth. So make sure you always get the Liquitex that has the clear gesso with tooth. You can spray your monotype on Evelon paper with Camar varnish. You can also use fixative for pastel. You can also work directly on the Evelon paper. It's a soft feel. If you work directly on the Evelon paper, it's like working on, fabric or maybe even a very soft velour paper. When I'm monotyping, I use Aqua inks. They're odor-free. They clean up with water and soap, are non-toxic, and will not dry on a non-porous surface. This is great for me because often I'll lay out some inks and then I'll start something and go away for several hours, even a couple days. And when I come back, the inks are still wet. I have been using only the Aqua Carbon Black as I'm interested in creating form and shape through light and dark, saving the pastel for the color on top of the monotype. I have a press. I came back and bought a press in 2019 after Dawn's class, but I know a lot of people don't. So I developed this monotype printing class as a way to show people you can do monotypes at home. You don't need an expensive press. So all you have to do, and I've been using smaller Evelon paper sizes for this. It comes in 8.5 by 11 inch Evelon paper. And the cost is less than $1 a sheet. So it's good for experimenting. You're not wasting a lot of money. You can soak the Evelon paper this size in a cookie sheet filled with water. Once wet, you blot off as much water as you can so the sheet is damp but not dripping. And then all you have to do is place the dampened Evelon paper on the ink plate monotype using a brayer with pressure over the surface. You repeatedly go over the dampened monotype on the dampened paper on the monotype. And then when you think it's done, you pull up corner, check it. If it looks done, then go ahead, pull it. So here's the process. The upper left is my sheet of plexiglass ready to put that ink onto my plates. The second photograph is the inked plate ready for the Evelon paper. The third photograph is the Evelon paper getting wet in the cookie sheet. And I didn't get a photograph of me drying the sheet, but I just put it between two towels and blot it dry as best I can. And then I put it on top of the mono print and use the brayer that you see there to roll over back and forth just to transfer the image. The fifth center lower bottom image is the monotype image, and then also the monotype print above. So you can see I did pretty well getting that ink off onto the Evelon paper. And then this is a close-up of the print. So all those little marks and things on that print, they were made on the plate. It's very easy to create marks and texture with any tool that you pick up. So I love the monotype print process for that effect that you can get. So okay, now counterprint. I did not know that you could take a print of your, let me get a drink of water. You can get a counterprint from your pastel painting. Evelon paper is perfect for this. You dampen the paper, you blot off the excess, and then place it over the pastel painting. Use a brayer to roll over the Evelon in vertical and horizontal movements. Peek at the result by lifting a corner to see if enough pressure was applied to transfer the image. If not, continue applying pressure with the brayer. When satisfied, you pull the Evelon from the pastel and allow it to dry. I usually wait till the next day, just make sure everything is dry, but the print does get lighter. Let's see. So here's the process of that. The upper photograph is the Evelon paper soaking in water. And then the next photograph is the dampened Evelon paper on the pastel. The next image is I'm holding the print. And the fourth image is the print on the left and the actual painting on the right. And then I got a second print. I decided, well, I'm going to try it again and see what happens. So this time I tried another print on the bottom portion of this 9x12 pastel painting. And I got a good enough print. I could work with that. So often you can get several images, several prints from one pastel painting. Now, these are two prints that I got off of one of my paints. The underpainting of the counterprint process allowed me to explore different color harmonies with the same image. The below are two prints from one pastel painting. Each was covered with pastel to create two different paintings. So the one on the left, I think I had in a PSWC show. And it was about the time of the eclipse, and it sold as eclipsed light. The next painting that I got from this image, I covered it more like a fall scene. So it was called Fall Colors, and that sold recently. So I'm really loving this image. It's done pretty well for me.
Carol,
Yes.
Laura is wondering if this alters your original pastel a lot.
Okay, I was getting to that. No, it does not. Now, you do have to remember when you're doing this counterprint, it will get your pastel painting a little damp. So it doesn't bother UART paper at all. But if you're using Canson paper or sketch paper to put your pastels on, then you might get a little warping with your paper. But UART paper is not bothered at all. Now, another thing you have to remember is that if you have sprayed your pastel painting with fixative or put clear gesso over it in certain areas, and I do this with some of my pastel paintings, I'm always working them and trying to see, well, what happens if I do this? And let's try this. Once you start applying fixative to your pastel painting, it will not print. If you use clear gesso, that seals the pastel to your surface. That will not print. So I'm only able to get a counterprint on pastel paintings that I have not used a lot of fixative or other things like that. So, and that goes to some of the things you should know about doing this. The counterprint removes the first layer of pastel it comes into contact with. If you apply many layers, as I do, you will not notice much difference in the pastel once you have done a print. If you apply your pastel thinly and without many layers, you may see a difference in the pastel after print. And then here again, what was that?
And Carol, sorry, a couple other questions. Doug's asking, it looks like the second print bleeds through the fabric. Does that affect anything?
It always bleeds through the fabric a little bit, but that will not affect anything.
Okay, and then Andrew's wondering, he said the audio dropped out. Do you need workable fixative to have enough tooth on your Evelon counterprint?
Well, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, continue.
Yes, that I will continue. So the Evelon paper does not have to be mounted after printing. I like to mount my prints because it makes it easier to frame. I use Crescent Perfect Mount. It is matte board with adhesive on one side. I have also used Dampen Reeves print paper for monotypes and counterprints, but if you do that, you will need a press to get a really good image. And then let's see, I use a soft rubber brayer. Any non-porous surface can be used to apply ink or oil paint to create a monotype. I use Plexi from the hardware store. Let's see, my pastel paintings are usually on UART paper, and this talks, I'm just reminding you how you have to make sure your paper can handle dampness. Let's see, maybe I didn't go over that. Okay, let me go back. Well, I believe I forgot to mention this. Yes, let me go to my demo now. Does anybody ever have any questions about this? And then I'm going to answer Doug's question. Okay, so let me stop. Okay, so Pam, can you highlight my phone?
Yeah,
Pam?
your phone is highlighted.
Oh, good, perfect. Okay, so here are my prints. Okay, so here is the monotype print. And what I like to do, once I get the monotype printed and mounted, I like to put a layer of clear gesso over it because I do like a little bit of grit. The Evelon paper, you can paint on that without applying anything, but like I said, it's very soft. It's like velour paper. And most of the time I like to go back over mine over and over again. So I'm going to tint this. To tint a monotype after, you've done the print and you've gone over it, I will take a little bit of clear gesso and then some ink. You can use any ink. You can use crushed up pastel. You can use watercolor. But I like to get that on my brayer. Let me set up again. There. I'm going to test it over here and make sure it's not too pink. So I just start applying the clear gesso and the ink. And I do that because sometimes if I've got a particular idea, as I do for this one, I want to tint those white areas. But I want to do it thinly because I want the textures that I got in the monotype to continue. So once I pretty much get it covered all over, I let it dry again. And it'll take about 15 minutes to a half hour to dry, depending on how thick. Sometimes I will take my Hobby Lobby and get a little bit of that mixture on and spread it thicker in some areas.
Doug's wondering if you've experimented with it, different sized braids.
Oh, yeah. I have up to a 12-inch brayer. And to me, I like the smaller brayers when I'm doing this small of work because you can get in there and really push harder and really get some good stuff going on. But I've also got a 12-inch brayer. So now, while we're waiting on this to dry, I'm going to be working on my first print, which is this one. This is the first counter print I did, and the one right beside it is the second counter print. Well, you can see that the first print grabbed most of the pastel layer on top. The second print wasn't as lucky. It did not get that much pastel on it, and there's quite a bit of white paper showing through. Here is the original painting. It's still got pastel on it, but not as much as it did have before. I had a lot of layers on this one. It was a scene from my backyard. Okay, so can everybody see that all right? Okay, so what the advantage is for me is I can take this idea of sunset behind the pines and see what else I can do with it. I haven't lost anything. The paper cost about less than $1. And all I get to do is experiment, play, and have fun. And that's what I love to do. So I decided for this one, what if I got rid of this tree? Whoops, darn. There we go. I need that one. What if I get rid of this tree? Oh, and I keep dropping it. By the way, I did put a fixative on this and also a clear gesso. So this has got a clear gesso surface on it. So I'm going to get rid of this tree over here. I've decided I don't like it. I'm going to make this that pink sky that I saw the other night. I'm going to get rid of all my clouds. You can see how easily and what a unique texture I'm getting from this surface. And if anytime anybody has any questions, please ask.
Well, right now people are just commenting on how creative it is and how you're getting their juices flowing.
Yeah. And that's what I love about the Evelon paper, because anybody can do this at home. You don't need a press. It's nice to have one, I'll admit, because I've done some large monotypes and counterprints from some of my bigger pastel paintings.
Chris is
But
wondering if you're working from memory or if you have a photo reference.
I have this out back behind my house, so I look at it and I've painted it a number of times. I'm right now I'm picking colors from I put this into Procreate and picked some colors, and I will show you that image afterwards. Does anybody use Procreate?
Yes, for portrait drawing.
Oh, I do it for experiments.
Um,
Before I start
Did
on
you say, Carol, that was a workable fixative, or is that clear gesso you're working on?
clear gesso,
And then where can we get the Evelon paper?
any art store. Dick Blick has it. I think Jerry's has it, but it's pretty cheap. You can get it on a roll if you really, really like it and want to do something big. And you can get it, let's see, this size was 8.5 by 11, 22 by 30, or on a roll. And they offer you the chance to buy 98 or 168 grams. I prefer the 168 grams. GSM. See, I'm going to get rid of that sunset entirely. I want to focus on the pink sky I saw. Warm up this tree a little bit. Oh, we're doing great on time, Pam.
You're doing great.
I'm nervous as hell. You know, one of my big fears about doing a demo is what if I get everything done and then I don't have anything left to do? So ask questions, everybody. I'm just applying this all over there. And then another thing that happens that I like is the way the background trees can take on this bluish green cast. The background in the area I live. I live in a flatlands, and so we have a lot of fields. In a flat area, and right now the cornfields are just gorgeous. They've been harvested. I'm going to put this tree back in there. And the corn stalks are just sitting up when the shadows are low in the sky, when the sun is low in the sky and the shadows come across as violet. So, you know, really there's a lot of beauty in my area.
Andrew's wondering if you've tried counterprinting to sanded paper.
Counter printing and what?
If you've tried counterprinting onto sanded paper.
Oh, no. Yes, I have, and it doesn't work. The Aqua inks I've been using do not dry on that sanded pastel paper. And I think it's because the sanded area must not be porous enough for it. So yes, I've tried it. It doesn't work. But I encourage you to try it too. Maybe you can do it in a new way.
And Doug's wondering if you've used watercolor paper.
I've used Reeves print paper, never watercolor paper to print from. The thing I found about the Reeves, and I'm sure this would be true with the watercolor, is again that it doesn't absorb quite as easily as this Evelon paper does, which is one of the things that makes it so good for printing. So I like to take a brayer at any time during my painting process and start using it as a tool to move pastel around.
What if you were to dampen the watercolor paper, Carol?
You wouldn't get as good as a print as the Evelon paper because of the way the Evelon paper works. I welcome you to try it and see what effects you get.
There's your invitation, Doug.
Yeah, come on, Doug, and then tell us all what you get when you get
Yeah.
done. I'd love to know.
And then you can do a demo.
Yes.
Chris is wondering what that brayer is doing in terms of, is it pushing in the surface?
It's pushing in, it's also moving the pastel around. So I've got that little bit of pastel right there in that blue-green color. Well, I can move, well, I'm not going to do that very well. I can move some of that color up here if I wanted to create a cloud or something. So what the brayer does, it softens edges and it moves the color around. It also, if I get too strong of a color back here, that pastel will take that color and push it into areas around it so it doesn't seem quite so bright. And then at any time you can go back over what you've brayered in.
We're loving that bluish gray background against the pink.
Yes. And I beat my paper a lot to make my marks. This is why I like to mount my pastel on my pastel prints and surfaces, just because I like to beat the heck out of them. Half the fun for me is trying to figure out, well, what can I do that I've never done before? Gigi. Gigi. Somebody's growling.
That's my dog snoring.
Oh,
I'm gonna mute myself.
that's
Sorry.
funny. It sounds like a machine. So I'm just continuing to add color. I pay close attention to values as I'm doing, whenever I'm painting, whatever I'm painting on. And I don't really care what color I'm using. Well, in this case, I do. I'm going with that warm red-green contrast, but I could, if I needed to, if I needed an accent, as long as it's the right value, I could put that accent in of any color.
Chris is
It's
wondering if you're thinking of a light source.
right up here. See where it's warmer up here? You can barely see it.
Doug?
No, I'm less concerned about a light source right now. I'm just enthralled by the color.
Doug has declared you a magician, Carol.
A magician? Well, what is a magician? A trickster? I'm tricking you. But no, I'm not tricking you. I'm experimenting. I'm telling you, get out there and experiment. Try monotype. Try counterprints. We all have bad paintings that we don't like. Can you do a counterprint of one and make yourself like it?
I think he just thinks you're making magic right in front of our eyes.
So, does anybody think they'll do a counterprint at some point?
Well, I'm looking online right now to try to find this paper.
It's at Dick Blick. It's called Evelon AP.
Apparently Theodore is doing some research on you because it says the April-May 2021 article in Plein Air also says you use a cake spreading knife, a wallpaper sparkle spreader, as well as a brayer.
Wallpaper sparkle spray. Right. What?
Spreader.
I
don't
think
know.
I think he mean, does he mean this? My squeegee?
I guess so.
Well, here's what you use a squeegee for. You pick up some color and you bring it elsewhere. For example, I could have weeds. Can you see what I'm doing?
Oh, yeah.
I could have weeds that extend from the foreground beyond the back, up over the background.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of, that's fun to do too. You can also do that with a brayer. I just grab some color down here and I can put it up anywhere. Typically, we might do it with the edge of a pastel.
Oh, I see. I think he meant a wallpaper spackle spreader, not a sparkle spreader.
Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah.
I have used that before. I've used it less recently. And I tend to just use the squeegee and the brayer and the palette knife.
Yeah, you got a number of people who are excited to start experimenting here, Carol.
Oh, please email me your experiments. I want to see how you do with it.
Chris is wondering if you can counterprint onto Reeves BFK.
Yes, I've done that before. I've done it without a press. You do not get as good of a print because it's something about the Evelon paper. It just sucks everything up and you get this real intense print from with the Evelon. But yes, you can do it with the Reeves BFK, but you just won't get as fine a print as what you want. But if you're just getting an underpainting layer, it might be enough for you.
Yeah, and Erica's excited to try this with some failed paintings.
Oh, that is one of the reasons I love it. I mean, I've got a lot of failed painting. I'm just like everybody else. We paint a lot and we make mistakes and we don't always throw them away when we should. But now we have a reason to keep them and use them. One thing that I've done before is if I have a certain area I like about a larger painting, I will cut a piece of Evelon to the size I want and just print off of that one area that I like. And that's been pretty effective because I can get several small paintings from a larger painting that I didn't like. And I can capture colors and moments of that painting that I thought really worked when the rest of it didn't.
Can you counter paint the counter painting?
Counter paint. I paint over the counter print. Is that what you mean?
Not sure. Chris, can you turn your mic on and ask your question?
Could you do a painting, a counter painting onto this painting when you're done?
You mean do a counter print of this?
Yes,
I don't see why not.
fun.
That, yeah. And what the paper does, it's damp, so it comes in contact with the first layer of pastel and then grabs it. So yes, I could. And I think I would end up with a ghost of the pastel on top of this, and the rest of it would be on the Evelon paper. So yeah, that would be something that I could try. Now, keep in mind, when you do a print of the pastel, you're getting a reverse image. So when you do a print of the counter print, you're going to get another reverse image back to the original.
Now Doug is saying, in order to play with this image, Carol needs to know what her subject is, and plein air and quiet observation is the best teacher.
Yes, I do a lot of plein air painting. The original painting was a plein air piece done from my house. But it wasn't something I really liked. For whatever reason, I just decided I don't like this, and it's been sitting in my studio.
So to some degree, you are working from plein air and from observation and, but just then moving on from that.
Yes. Number of artists over that we are familiar with, Degas, George Inness, Monet, Wolf Kahn, have all mentioned different times about how important it is to work from your memory. So what I'm painting now, I have seen before in real life. I've not painted it in real life, but I remember it. So I'm basically just working from my memory. And I'm just using a little piece that I got a hold of. You can use any kind of pastel you want for this process. Mostly my pastels right now have been Great Americans. And I also use Giroux. It really doesn't matter. Now, I think it's too dark. I think I want to have a little bit of a trunk in here because I like to know what the tree is being supported by. And then if I put a trunk in, I always try to go over it again. So this image is about, well, the paper size was 8.5 by 11. So this is approximately 8 by 10 by the time I cut it down. So it's mounted, it's ready to stick in a frame with glass now. And I can take it to one of my galleries and say, quick little painting if you're interested. This is also a good surface to work with your pan pastels.
Mm. And how large do you go with your press, Carol?
Well, my press can go as large as 22 by 30. So, and I've done a monotype 22 by 30. And like I said, I took that Dawn Emerson workshop and it was life-changing. Came back, bought a press. And I haven't looked backwards since. I'm usually working many different paintings any one time. And I think that I must have ADD or AHD or whatever that is. I'm always thinking, always working, always thinking of something different. So I have to move around to keep myself interested in what I'm doing. Usually I'll start something, put it aside, work on something else, and then go back to a painting again and again. Takes me a long time sometimes just to finish something.
Does that make it hard for you to work plein air? I see people that stand and work on pieces for hours and hours at a time, and I have to walk away so often. I'm like you. I walk away, come back, walk away, come back, and often have multiple pieces going at once. I think if I
Yes.
stay in front of one piece long enough to finish it outdoors, I don't know. I don't think I could do it.
No, I couldn't either. And I found out that I don't do well at plein air competitions because I get the initial painting done. And then when I should step back and look at it and reevaluate, I don't have the opportunity to. So I no longer do plein air competitions. I go out for my own pleasure now. And that is a much better way to paint.
That makes sense.
Lately, I've been plein air painting sitting in my car. I've gotten so lazy over the years. I don't like to get out and set up, and then a car comes by and says, "Get out of my driveway," or "Are you throwing your trash out?" Once somebody comes by, that breaks my concentration. Now, just for fun, let's put a few of those spots down here. That one might be a little too thick.
Carol, I'm just curious, are you still planning to go back to the one on the left?
Yes,
Okay,
that's why I went ahead and covered it, because I want to give it a chance to dry. So
okay.
it's only 2:00. We have an hour, right?
And we can, yes,
Doesn't this last from 1 to 3?
it can.
Oh, I thought,
Absolutely.
was it supposed to be shorter?
Well, it depends. Some people go for 90 minutes, some,
Oh, well, I plan on going until I get
I'll stay
done.
with you as long as you're going.
Good, good. So I think I'm pretty much done with this for now.
Okay,
At some point, I will have to set, and this is now, I'm going to set it aside and reevaluate later. But I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. And it's so different from the original painting. I feel like I've gotten a brand new painting from that original plein air image. And
absolutely.
I almost like this one better for some reason. still see some compositional things I need to fix. The tree pretty much goes up and down in an even way where I should have a branch or two sticking out farther. So that is one thing I need to fix. And even if you do have to make a drastic change to fix something, it's easy with this paper. See, I can get rid of that branch entirely. These two, I'm looking at my composition now. And it takes me sometimes a while to see compositional areas. Sometimes I'll have to frame something up and then hang it and look at it for a while. So that's better now. I haven't made it so even as it was.
How do you spell that paper?
Evolon, Evelon.
EV. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so right now I have to walk away because I think I'm doing too much with it and I need to look at this now. So we tinted this. I tinted my monotype because I like a magenta color underneath a lot of my paintings. This has got clear gesso on it. It's textured. It feels good. I wish you could feel this. Nothing feels better than a good paper that has the appropriate texture. And if you look close, you can still see my texture created by the monotype that I wanted to still be there. Now, I might end up covering it all up, but until I know that for sure, I like to just have a thin layer on until I decide what I'm going to be doing.
Carol, as we were
Yes.
watching you finish doing those marks on that last painting, and it looked so easy the way you were adjusting and everything. One more question. Do you ever fill the tooth of the paper in that way? It looked like you could have kept going as long as you wanted.
I've never filled the tooth yet. Now, but if you do fill the tooth, at this point, you can come in with your clear gesso and your brayer and put another thin layer in.
Okay.
So let's see. Since this is the demo piece and I don't really care, I'm going to show you. So I've got a thin layer of gesso on this brayer. And if I decided I could come in here and put that in there, well, what that does, it darkens right there. It'll dry. And when it dries, it'll have more texture. And I can go in and put that pastel back on there. So maybe that'll dry by the time I'm done with this. So at any point, you can take gesso, clear gesso, with a brayer and put it anywhere on your painting that you want. And I've done that for a number of years. Clear gesso, I think, is one of the greater inventions of life.
Carol, look what you did with that clear gesso and that color on that branch that you just put down. That's pretty cool, that color.
Oh, you like that color?
Yeah.
Well, that's going to dry.
The red color at the top of that branch you just put in.
Oh, yeah, but still, that's going to dry and be a little bit different.
Right, but I mean, when you experiment like that, it all of a sudden, hey, that looks cool.
Yes. And if I wanted to, I might want to take a reddish color and maybe make my sky a different color. Wouldn't that be fun? What if the sky was redder? I've seen it redder. So anyway, there's just so much you can do. And here I'm just going to use my brayer and just run that red all over the place. And then I'll fix it later. So now this is a wetland area that I like to go to. I got several photographs from the area. I love to paint wetlands. So I'm going to use, again, colors out of my memory. But because this is black and white and gray, I could use any colors from the color wheel. As long as I've got the right value, any colors could be used. I firmly believe that about painting, that you don't necessarily have to be looking at the scene to do a painting. You can make it up out of your head as long as your values are correct. Now, in this area, it was mostly grassy area. If I want to, I can take my brayer in there and spread it around. The hardest part for me when I'm pastel painting over a monotype is leaving the marks. I've had a hard time doing that because I just like to keep going.
Carol, do you use the latex clear as it is, or do you dilute it?
No, I use it as it is. You could dilute it, but I've never seen a reason to dilute it. Does anybody else dilute theirs?
And have you done any work with the golden pastel ground?
No, I've used the MyQus, what is it? I can't pronounce that word. Micro something iron oxide. It creates a greenish, not a greenish, but a black grayish glitter that you paint over everything. And I've used that for night paintings. I've used the golden acrylic as an underpainting. Didn't really like the effect much because I kept covering it up. I'm going to make the sky orange this time.
Judy says she occasionally dilutes it when she's applying it with a brush.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you need to wash your brayer when you spread colors on the same?
I just wipe it off with a paper towel. Now that was unexpected. I did not know I was going to do that till I did that. Never thought about doing that. So one of the reasons I like this method that I've been doing is I could try something totally new, and it doesn't matter if it works or doesn't work. I like that a little bit better with that hint of something brighter back there. Maybe that will be my sun. So I'm kind of exploring as I'm going. Say that is the sun back there. Again, I'm probably just working from memory. I am working from memory. And I'm going to take this down. At any point, if I decide, well, I don't like something, I can change it and go over it again. Like I'm not liking how this is all one level. So I'm going to raise and get a higher tree up there. And then I want to put some let's see, some water in here. And what color do I want to use for the water?
I think you were talking about the micaceous iron oxide.
Yes, that's it, micaceous. I can never remember that. Yeah, that's fun to use. And it sparkles. I'm liking pinks and reds today for some reason. Looks like they're in my paintings, both thick paintings.
That texture you're getting, that's strictly from the gesso?
Yes, and the paper and the monoprint. You can see up here, it's like a very nice rough texture where the upper ridges get some pastel and the lower ridges do not. If you don't like that look, you can always go over it with the brayer and push it in to all of the levels. To me, this is a big advantage because once I get that pushed in, I can go over it with another color that will allow the bottom color to show through. So I can continually get new effects.
It's really cool.
It is so much fun too. Just keep experimenting. I think that's what keeps me in the studio, that I never know what's going to happen.
So when you're out plein air painting, you can't experiment too much because the light keeps changing.
Yes, and cars, they bug me. Yes, that is the problem. The light changes within 2 hours. And I like to work early morning or early evening. So that means the light seems like the light changes even faster. Want some of these reflections to show down over here. So I'm going to drag that color over the water area. And then I'm going to, this is a pan pastel tool, and it just kind of smudges everything in. There's another, whoops, tool I like to use. This is an old brush that was rotten because I left it out to dry. So I pulled the bristles out and put some squeegee, whoops, some squeegee in there. So this is like a long-handled squeegee brush. And anybody can use these in painting with oil or pastel. It's a great smudging tool.
Tell us again what you did to create that smudging brush.
Oh, well, how many people here have brushes that they forgot to clean out from oil painting or acrylic painting? I bet everybody does. What do you do with them? Do you throw them in the trash? From now on, take a pair of pliers and squeeze right here to open up so you can get the bristles and pull them out, and then cut a squeegee to fit. And then press the brush metal back together, and you'll have a squeegee brush. It's long handled. I like long handled because it offers me less control. So I don't have to worry when I'm painting that with a typical squeegee brush like this from Hobby Lobby, it's short handled, and I'm always, you get in too close, and I don't like doing that. I like to be out of control because you get the most creative marks when you're out of control. So they're very easy to make. Anybody who has messed up their brushes, I recommend make one. It's amazing what you can do with it. And you can use it for oil painting too.
So instead of the bristles, it actually has like rubber in that you put in there.
Yeah, you can go to the hardware store and get replacement squeegee, just
Got
the
it.
rubber from the squeegee. And you can cut it to any length. So I cut it to fit into my brush.
Brilliant.
One of the best things I've ever come up with. So if anybody makes $1 million off this idea, please send me your, my royalties. So I'm going to cool this down a little bit up here. And I still have, because of that clear gesso on top of all this, I still have a lot of good texture. Even though I've put a couple layers of pastel on here, I still have good texture that I can get to. Does anybody else use clear gesso on their pastel paintings?
I've got some, but I keep wanting to find a use for it.
Oh, well, now you know, you can use it at any process at any time during the painting process.
Well, Doug, what is it that you're using to create that texture on the top of yours? I thought it was clear gesso.
No, it's not clear. It's just the old white gesso, but I tint it with a
Oh.
little colored Liquitex or whatever to get a medium. But I use, like she says, you just use an old battered up brush to create that texture.
Oh.
But my main thing is that I plan on how all of my texture works with a rhythm within the painting.
Right. Well, Cindy says this looks like crazy fun. Judy says Carol is a wealth of ideas and inspiration. Thank you. Susan Kuznitsky says gorgeous, Carol. And Judy
Aw.
says yes. Francesca is looking forward to trying this. Chris uses clear gesso over watercolor paintings, and then she adds pastel. Yes, Doug, I was thinking the same thing, which is that this whole demonstration relates really well, folks, to the brand new show that PSWC is adding next year, which is about multimedia. We're adding a new show called Out of Bounds, which is going to
Oh, that's
debut.
fantastic.
We're debuting a brand new show next spring. And it's going to be, we're going to break the rules. It's not going to have to be 80% pastel for the top layer. It's going to be in Morro Bay, and the judge is going to be Tony Elaine, and he's coming in person.
Oh,
Yeah, so
awesome.
he's going to do a workshop, and so watch for that. It's very exciting. So yeah, this is another perfect idea about a way to kind of break the bounds and use pastel in a whole nother way. So wonderful. Karen
Yeah.
says so exciting and inspiring. Tara and Michael learning so much. Thank you. Very exciting. You know, usually we have people drop off after a while, but instead we've had more people join. The word is
Oh,
has been
good.
spreading in the morning. Judy says she uses credit cards with cut up edges, plastic forks, cheap brushes, and she cuts the bristles in different lengths. So
Yes.
she just her imagination run in terms of creating texture. That's really cool.
And you know what? If she were to try the mono printing process with those tools, it's amazing what you can come up with. It's so exciting.
Lynn Addick says she loves your inspiration and loose style. She's going to try some of these tools and methods.
Good. Well, if you do, please email me. I'd like to see what you do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I am just always excited by innovation and experimentation.
And I know, Carol, that you said we don't need to have a printing press, and the whole idea behind this demo is to show us how we can use these wonderful methods without a printing press, but selfishly, I'd really like to know what kind of printing press you have and where you got it.
Well, when I came back from that Dawn Emerson workshop, I had to have a press. I didn't care. I didn't know that, that I could do this Evelon paper without a press at that time. And so I started asking friends, and I just happened to find somebody who had purchased a press, and it's a pretty large one, through a grant several years ago. And she was ready to get rid of it. So for $2,000, I bought a big press. And it's a Conrad press. The paper size can be 22 inches wide, and at least I could go up to 36 inches, I think, long. So this is a big press, and wow, was it a hassle to get it into my studio. But it's been the best thing I've bought in ages.
Okay.
And it really helped me a lot. So if you just put the word out that you're looking for a press, and sometimes the universe hears you and supplies it. I really believe that, because I think that's how I got my press, because I put the word out, and lo and behold, I found somebody who wanted to get rid of a press.
Yeah, I'll have to look for someone who's downsizing their studio.
Yes. Yeah, just put the word out with whoever and see if you can find a used press.
Yeah.
So this one I'm not real happy with, but it is what it is. It's a demo. Did the best I could. And I will probably work on it some more.
That's lovely.
It's okay. I would probably at some point take a picture of it in black and white and just check my values, because I'm thinking something's wrong about my values that I haven't figured out yet. So the process for me a lot of time with painting is paint, wipe it off, paint, wipe it off again, paint, wipe it off some more, just back and forth constantly until I'm happy. And that's one of the reasons I like the clear gesso and the monotyping, because at any point I could wipe it off and start over. If I decided I hate this painting, I could go over the whole thing with clear gesso and start over.
Now, once you like it and you've decided, like you said, the one on the right, you could frame it, you mount this paper. How do you mount the paper?
Crescent mount, and I usually mount it before I start pastel painting on it.
Oh,
You
yeah. Okay.
can mount it after the pastel is on there, but it's just easier if you do it, before you start putting pastel on.
Right. Okay. Do you frame against the glass, or do you use a mat or spacers?
I usually frame against the glass. Sometimes I'll use spacers, though I'm getting away from those now.
Yeah.
And if I think the painting needs space around it, then I do use a mat.
Okay.
And I get somebody else to cut that mat for me, because I hate cutting mats.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a gray color. Sometimes I find that if I'm having trouble with my values, then sometimes it just might be that they're too chromatic. This is just one of those sponges from Pan Pastels. Okay, let's take a break from this now. And let's go back over to this one, where I first started. So now this should be dry, and it is, and I can go back in. I think I dropped the pastel, there it is. I can go back in and put that color back in that I like, but then after what Doug said, I kind of like that darker reddish color there. Because I've seen that before at night too, in the evenings. Where we have a beautiful, wild, reddish sky. It's just like the sky is on fire. So what happens if I do that? Make the sky even more fluorescent and red, and the sun is below the horizon now, and that's why we don't see any light. And tone it down a little. So now, you see how I've covered that all up, and I don't see any more of that darkness from the previous branch that was there. Oops. I'll tell you one thing, I've dropped more pastel with this demo than I ever have. It looks like a good old scrubby tree. So I've almost made another painting, a different painting from what was previously there. Let's make the sky really red down here. And I'm still able to put a lot of pastel on here because of that clear gesso. So Doug, now you know what to do with that clear gesso. Use it.
Now you have a Liquitex clear gesso?
Liquitex clear gesso that adds tooth.
Okay.
I think they make a clear gesso without tooth, so be careful. It has to say adds tooth. So let's bring some of that color and just gradate it. By the way, the brayer is a great tool for gradating a sky. How many of you use brayers for painting?
I've used one when I was experimenting with some things that I learned from Dawn.
Oh, yeah. I use them with just about every painting now. There's so many things they can do. So I don't know if that was a good idea or not. And if I decide to, well, I can take it back to where it was. And still, I've got plenty of tooth. And I've got layers and layers built up on this.
It's amazing. And I mean, cost factor compared to even UART, it's just,
It's very affordable.
yeah. Wow.
I wish I could say I'm making money from helping to sell it, but I'm not. So I don't usually leave a lot of marks with my pastel, but you can see that I can create marks within on the pastel surface. If that's the way you're used to working, you can still do that. So if you're a mark maker and love the effect of the marks,
Francesca is wondering if you can brush off layers.
of course. So okay, let's go to this one. I don't like how that had turned out. So let's do this.
Oh.
So I just
Like-
brushed off a lot of layer.
Yeah, I'll say,
Now I have a ghost.
wow. Huh.
So what do you think I'm going to try next?
Go for it.
I am. Let's see. So I've totally lost my monotype underneath, but that's okay. We're trying something new.
Marianne is wondering if doesn't a brayer flatten the sparkle when you use the brayer over the pastel?
I've never had that happen. I mean, I know that's what they say, but even in this one, I went over it with the brayer and I was still able to keep a lot of my sparkle. So no, I don't think that's an effect that really bothers me. I guess when I do go over with the brayer, I'm always putting the pastel back in.
Now you're going over with gesso again?
This is just clear gesso.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to create a little bit different scene from what I had there before. So this one is I'm still going to have that water in there, but maybe I'm going to make some of the water come into here. So I'm putting pastel over wet gesso, and it will not cause any problems. At any point, I can take my palette knife and scrape down if I need to, if I want to get some of those lighter areas. I'm thinking about some of those grassy areas that were in the wetlands. Which Marianne was that?
That was Marianne Woosley.
Oh, okay, I know another Marianne. I didn't know if she'd be here or not. So you don't have to wait for the gesso to dry before you start putting on pastel again. And that's because the brayer keeps it so thin on the surface. If I were putting big clumps of gesso on here with a brush, then yes, I would be concerned about it affecting my pastels. But this is on there so thinly. So I've got a totally different scene. And I might even like it better.
This is crazy. It's never ending.
That's right. It's ending when when I tell you it's done. So, and maybe that I make mistakes all the time. I'm just happy that I can make mistakes and yet still get a painting. So, and that's the advantage of pastel over any other medium. I don't know if you could do this with any other medium like you could pastel.
The part that's amazing to me is that it's not just you can keep going over and over and over, but you're also able to keep digging from underneath.
Yes. So this was a very grassy area. And I like the way the water sparkled through. So I'm going to go back to one of my original photographs that I took there. And I think I'll make it a blue sky this time. So I'm going to totally change the environment. I mean, I was talking a sunset on this one. It just didn't work out. So now I'm going to try something else.
This is completely different from oil painting where you have to mix a color you want compared to just grabbing the color you want.
Yes. And mixing on the paper or the board.
Andrew says he's basking in your process and mindset, and it's a fantastic experience.
Oh, well, I hope he tries it because it's so fun. So now again, let's see. If these spots bother me, I can go through with the brayer and press in the pastel. Now, do you think I've removed some of the sparkle? And now I'm going to go over it again.
I mean, I can't tell if it's that much different than when people use a harder pastel to blend.
Yeah. Yeah, I can still create. So I can go over and you can see those spots again.
Yeah.
But that's the advantage of this. So it's another reason you should stick close to value. So let's see. this is close in value to that blue. So when I go over it, I'm getting some of the blue and some of the red violet,
It just glows.
and it helps it to glow. You're right. That cool and warm together creates a glow.
And the far left at the top where the sun is just hitting the top of those trees. That's cool.
Ah, thank you. Ooh, we got 15 minutes. Okay, I wanted to show you something else on this second print. Yes, so that's the second print, and you can see a lot more of the paper underneath that. There it is. So for this one, I'm going to stick with pan pastels. And this is an excellent way to use your pan pastels. They're transparent, so whatever is underneath usually shows through. They mix on the surface, just like your regular pastels. And you can leave some of the print to show through a lot easier with pan pastels. One of the things about this scene when I was painting it, it was beautiful the way the clouds in the sky were just kind of going in a horizontal way, yet the verticalness of the trees was such a good contrast. So I'm going to see if I can get that back. And the clouds were that kind of a violety, bluish violet cast. I might not.
Chris says, this is so inspiring. She was planning to relax this weekend and now has so many painting ideas.
Good. I love sharing this information because it just shows how versatile pastel is. It's such a beautiful medium and it's so underrated.
It makes a clear point of whether pastel is a drawing medium or a painting medium.
It's both. I mean, what other medium can you do both with?
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe oils. You know, they say that in the museums, they have to put the Degas and all the famous pastel paintings away. But today we have better surfaces and better pastels than what they had hundreds of years ago. So ours will not have to stay in a drawer ever.
Do you use one of those pan pastel brushes?
Yeah, I'm using one right now.
No, they're like a little spatula.
Oh, no, I can't stand those. My problem with it is whenever I'm using it, that little sponge that fits on the end of that brush falls off because I press too hard.
Ah,
Carol Sue Waters says, thank you, Carol. I have my project ready to go after we sign off. I have ribs,
Oh.
paper, and some aqua ink, so there's nothing to stop me. And by coincidence, I'm enrolled with Renee Muller's artist community. This month, she introduced us to Edgar Degas, hoping we would be inspired with his work and methods. I'm ready to combine the two sessions this afternoon, printing and pastels, two very enjoyable interests of mine. Again, thank you, Carol.
Well, if whatever you do, let me know, or if you have any questions, send me an email.
Cindy says, thanks, Carol.
We're a community of artists. We learn from each other. For my squeegee brush. Fuzz that a little. So I wipe this squeegee off every time after I dip onto the painting, because nothing makes me madder is to leave a dark mark in an area I want to be light. Let's try this. You can almost, you look, whoa, that might be the end. If you look close, you can see the texture of the paper itself, which I find fascinating. So, yeah, I think, is it 3 o'clock now?
Yep, just about enough time to.
I'm
Yeah.
exhausted.
I bet you are. You know, you've done a perfect job of giving us so much to think about, and yet leaving us wanting more. So I think we're just gonna have to find a way to have you back somehow.
Well, anytime.
You've shared so much. Oh, Carol, you've given us so much to think about.
Well, it's been so much fun. I love this process of painting, and I love to share it because get more people doing it. It's a very creative way to paint.
Let me just remove this and just do this so we can just see. There you are. Look at you. And it's so perfect. You're smudged with your paint. We can see you've been working hard. Yeah. Thank you so much, Carol.
Well,
an
thank you. I
Oh,
really appreciate it. Oh, look at my nose.
I know, it's perfect. I love it. I love it. Oh, I think you've left us all eager to maybe stock up with some additional inspiring materials and do some experimenting and kind of, break ourselves out of bounds a little bit and try some things we haven't tried before. It's been very, very inspiring. Thank you.
Good, good. I hope so.
Perfect.
Thank you, Carol.
I gotta go wash my
Thank
face.
you.
We're gonna have you back.
Everybody. Pam, I will send you the PDF.
Thank you very much. I'll be sharing it widely. I'll share it widely and wildly. And we'll be posting the video to our YouTube channel, and I'm sure it'll get a lot of views. And we'll be talking again soon. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Thank
everyone, have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.